So how do you finance that next buy to sell project, that next flip project? How do you go about funding that deal? So traditionally, if you're looking for a buy to let property, it's an investment that you'll be holding for the long term, then putting a buy to let mortgage on that will often make sense. So it's long-term finance. If you're buying a property to live in, again, you'll be using a mortgage because you'll be holding that loan over the long term. When it comes to flipping property, it's a short-term transaction. You ideally want to be buying the property, renovating it, and getting it sold, cash in the bank, in somewhere around 6 months. Might take a little bit more in some cases, depending on the complexity of the refurb, depending on how quickly your buyer moves forward. It can take longer than that, but generally speaking, it's a short-term thing. So it's not a good idea to be using long-term finance for a short-term transaction. Mortgage lenders don't like it if you're using mortgages to fund your flips. And the problem with doing that is you might find that if you do get a mortgage to fund flips and then you want to get a mortgage in the future, you might have more problems in some cases because lenders might look at you and say, well, you don't actually want to have this for the long term. You're just going to do another flip. Now, lenders have different criteria. There's no guarantees in terms of what all the lenders will say about that situation, but it's best avoiding taking that risk because you don't want to later on down the road find it difficult to get mortgages. Should you want to be doing buy to lets or buying a property to live in yourself, you want to make sure you've got the best chance of getting mortgages. So don't use mortgage finance for flips. That's a big mistake and it's very easy to make that mistake. So avoid that altogether. Instead, if you're using some sort of finance, then the best method, of course, is private finance. So you're borrowing money from individuals. It's typically more flexible. So private finance is an individual who is essentially not a bank, not a mortgage lender, not a bridging lender, just someone that you can borrow money from and give them a rate of interest in return. That can be really flexible. If someone has money in the bank, maybe they've got some savings from their job that they've built up, or maybe they've got some inheritance. Ultimately, if that is sat in the bank, it's probably not working anywhere near as hard as it could if you offered them a return on that money. So you can offer them a higher rate, win-win for them and for you because it funds your deal and ultimately it gives them a generous return on interest as well. And that's all up for negotiation in terms of what you'll offer them. But ultimately, if it's more attractive to them, then it's a win-win scenario for you and them. So private finance is how I funded a whole bunch of my property flip deals. What's great about it is it's flexible. So the term that you negotiate, again, it's all down to you and the investor. You can offer them the rate of interest that suits them, suits their needs, but also allows enough margin for you to be able to borrow that money and still make decent profit on your next flip project. So it's all for negotiation, but it's a very flexible form of finance that can work really, really well. So that can be great. And what you can do as well is for security for your investor is you can offer them the first charge on that property that you are buying. So should anything go wrong in the unlikely event, your investor has first charge on that property. So they then own the property like a bank would if you were unable to service the loan back to them, if that makes sense. So again, it's just a way of reassuring your investor. But that's not going to happen because you're going to do an amazing flip and make a load of money out of it, but it can give them added security knowing that there's always a risk should things go wrong. So that's private finance, and it can be a great way of funding property flip deals. Flips are done over the short term, which means you can pay your investors back in full over the short term. So it's a great way to raise finance and offer generous returns to them. Cash, if you've got it, of course, you can fund your project with cash and you don't have to pay interest to anybody because it's your money. Great if you've got it. And of course, you can put that to good use. And another common way of funding flips is using bridging finance. So bridging finance is essentially short-term lending. So you're borrowing from similar to a mortgage lender, but bridging companies are specifically designed to offer short-term finance. So for property deals, you'll probably be borrowing that money somewhere in the region of 6 to 12 months, and you'll be paying a higher rate of interest than most mortgages because bridging finance is traditionally seen as more expensive, but it is a short-term thing. So you'll be paying that back in full when you sell the property. So you're not borrowing that money over the long term. So you normally pay a higher rate of interest. You'll be paying arrangement fees typically to get the loan. You'll be paying legal fees, valuation fees for them to go out and value the property that you're using as security to get this loan. And you'll often have, in some cases, exit fees as well. So if you pay the loan off early, you might have an exit fee. So make sure when you're looking into bridging finance that you understand all the costs involved, so you can calculate that, factor it into your numbers when you're looking at a deal to do, to see whether it's worthwhile for you. But bridging finance is the way to go if for whatever reason you don't have private finance available, you don't have cash yourself. Bridging finance is a good way to go. It is fairly flexible and it's fairly quick. So if you're buying properties at auction, again, you can get yourself a bridging loan more quickly than you would a conventional mortgage anyway. So when you're buying at auction, it's essential to use bridging to be able to meet the deadline, especially if it's a 28-day deadline. You'll normally not be able to get a mortgage in time, even if you wanted to. So bear that in mind. Bridging can come in handy when buying at auction, and when deadline and speed is key, bridging finance can be a great way. So if you're looking at bridging, I would suggest finding a bridging broker that can give you some options, that has particular lenders that they work with. And if you can talk about the situation, what property you're looking to buy, how much it's going to be worth when you sell it, what works are going to be done. Is it a heavy refurbishment? Is it going to be structural work, extensions, more than just the typical standard refurbishment? Make sure they know everything about that project in advance, because lenders have different criteria. They have different appetites for risk and different properties they want to lend on. So it's important that you open and communicate that with your bridging broker before you get an option. Last thing you want to do is go ahead, pay some fees, and then once the valuation happens on the property, it's not considered suitable for what they will lend on. That's just a waste of time and money. So make sure you're clear up front what you're looking to achieve, what that property is like now, what it's going to be like when it's finished, what works are involved, and be really specific on that. So short-term finance is crucial when you're flipping property. You don't want to be getting down the route of mortgages and then making things difficult for yourself in the future when it comes to being able to get mortgage finance. Short-term is the way to go. That's cash, that's private finance, that's bridging. Any of those or a combination of them is the way to go when it comes to funding that next buy to sell project. So if you're looking at buy to sell projects, if you're looking for that next flip, you should be looking now to be getting that finance in place before you even find a deal. That way you're ready to pull the trigger as soon as that deal comes along, and you're prepared, so it's not all some desperate rush at the end when you found a deal and you're worried you're going to lose it. So get looking for that finance. Have those conversations now with investors, with bridging brokers, so you understand what you need, what cash you have available, and ultimately you're better placed to pull that trigger as soon as you find a deal. So hopefully that's all been useful for you, and you'll see me soon in the next video.